Hey guys, so Liberty Day has ended for Helldivers. For all of you that are still keeping up with the game, I understand that after all those strange patches that the devs did, just nerfing a bunch of stuff and just drove away the rest of, like, a lot of the players are already driven away by Sony just straight up canceling the game in certain countries, that was definitely fucked up because players bought the game and they were playing it and now they couldn't. And so that unfortunately wasn't the devs' fault. That was their, of course, parent company, Sony. And as for the devs themselves, something you can actually blame them for is their strange wave of just patches, just like nerfing a bunch of stuff. I think they did do that to randomly balance the game to be more. I don't know. All right. But they did rebuff a lot of things and basically I say fix the game again. And for that, since the player base has slowly been coming back more and more, and especially since Space Marine 2, even though a bunch of people were like, I fight for Space Marine 2 now, it's like, dude, it's $100 fucking dollars. Helldivers are $40 for all of this that you can all this that you can see, and then most people have been playing, right? Just $40 for that. Like Space Marine 2, I'm sure the Warhammer 40k fans are happy about it, but that is not the deluxe edition. Like how for Red Dead 2, the deluxe edition is like $100 for like the game, a bunch of cosmetics, and even a free secret mission, not secret mission, but like a random mission in single player, which apparently a lot of people don't know about. That for Red Dead 2, if you buy the deluxe edition, you get an entirely new mission that's like a bank robbery, right? That wasn't in the base game. I honestly didn't even know that, but that is honestly a really good incentive to buy the deluxe version. Not only just because it's just the game itself, with also extra cosmetics, also extra gameplay. That's crazy. But for Space Marine 2, that's just the base edition is $100. Like, that's insane. But as for Helldivers, honestly, the game has been going pretty swell, pretty smoothly, at least for me. Also, since a lot of people are coming back to the game, that also means that a lot of new people are coming to the game too, which I thought was pretty cool. And something I wanted to mention is that although the game's only been out for like a year now, in which, yes, this game came out at the beginning of this year in what was it, January or February or something? No. I think it was January or December maybe even December of last year. But yeah, this game's been out for a full year now, basically. And even though it's only been out for a full year, because it's very community based in its the way players interact with each other, is also means that the community itself evolves over time. Think of it like the GTA community. As for other games that have communities with them, like Battlefield and for Call of Duty, you'll notice that even though Battlefield has a 2-year lifespan, from beginning to end, players generally act the same from beginning to end. You'll see what I'm getting to in a second, but even for Call of Duty, even for a full year of just gameplay for Call of Duty, players will basically act the same way, be the same way. The only thing that's really going to change is how refined what they're doing is. Whether it be it's a try-hard, that's over time getting better at mastering the controls and their accuracy, or it's just a casual player that over time just finds either more or less time just to play the game, right? But meanwhile, as for games like Helldivers and GTA, in the beginning of their lifespan, the community is very noticeably different than the end of its lifespan. And I am comfortable saying that GTA is the end of its lifespan. I think it had a really good run. Not in the beginning. Everybody remembers. I didn't get the game at the beginning. I remember that I did want to get it, but the multiplayer in the beginning, if you guys don't remember, was a horrible launch. You guys know how Battlefield 4 had a horrible launch? It was sort of similar to that, where most of the problems was really server side. What's it called? It's I was gonna say server side makes sense, but at the same time, GTA doesn't use full servers. GTA uses old PlayStation 3 Modern Warfare 2 LAN system, where one player hosts the game that doesn't even know that they're hosting the game, while the rest of the players basically join them in their region. Meanwhile, as for other games that have evolved at this time, of course Call of Duty and Battlefield, you join Activision specific servers and EA specific servers, and then you play the game, right? So as for GTA, like for that launch, it was terrible, and the community is very vocal about it. And I found that interesting that for something like this, the community can be extremely vocal for something that needs to be fixed. But whenever you see nowadays, whenever something that does need to be fixed, like the orbital cannon and a whole bunch of other stuff, most players really at this point just don't care anymore. And the ones that do care is just the YouTubers, unfortunately. It really is just a very minute unmajority. So what's it called? Minority. I don't know how I forgot that. Minority. But that's something that I mean, that over time the community can evolve based on developers and the player perception with each other over time. And I've also noticed that for Helldivers 2. Now you'll see what I was getting at, and eventually, and that was the way players play the game. Like, I remember in the beginning, the whole, a shtick was, you can, play the objectives, whatever, and take it seriously, but overall, we want you guys to have fun. And that is still a very common, accepted, reality for a bunch of players. As long as you're not randomly going up, someone just, shooting in the back of the head just for the funsies, most players aren't really gonna have a problem with it. Me, and, I'm not a high-level player, I'm, in the 50s, but for plenty of other players that hang around with new players, the new players are still trying to get adjusted to the game, and we all of the rest of us know that, so we don't really bully them or pester them if they do something wrong, what's this, what's it called, cluster strike, right? And they just throw it into an objective, not realizing they were in there, and then when the cluster strike comes and kills everybody around it within the 50-meter radius, they're like, oops. I know some players get pissed off about that, but most of us really don't. The second we spawn back in, we don't start shooting them and testing them in chat, be like, what the fuck were you doing with that cluster? Most of us are fine. They'll figure it out over time, because we figured it out over time. And I do mean cluster bombs, because I remember back when I started out, every new player, the second they got them, used them all the time, because honestly they looked cool and they were actually pretty useful for dealing with a lot of little enemies that just wander around, right? The big enemies back then weren't that common, and nowadays they're a little bit more common, but back then it was mostly just swarms of little guys. And even on the especially on the bug front, swarms of little guys. So the cluster bomb was used heavily with new players. Nowadays when I see new players, they use the more rational stratagems, like the orbital strike, or even if they get the chance to have it, the orbital laser, right? Even the rocket pods, but dude, back then everyone was using the cluster bomb the second they got it. And I think that also strikes something interesting, is that the Helldivers community is actually pretty good at especially sometimes with communication, with teaching players how to get better at the game. And I think this is good I think this is very common with games like Helldivers. Even though Battlefield is a PvP game, Battlefield is PvP with teams of players. You rarely ever just one dude with also a small little team of other dudes, and your whole point is just trying to survive, right? Even though Call of Duty does have teams with Team A and Team B or whatever, most of the time, in order to win a Call of Duty match, it's really up to you. A teammate can carry you, but it's up to you specifically to help win the match, right? But as for Battlefield, you could be the best PvP player in the world, and you're going to lose the match because you did not take out any artilleries, you did not take out any tanks, you did not fight any helicopters, you did not revive any teammates, you did not do shit. You were just doing PvP the whole time, which most of the time for Call of Duty that works. But for Battlefield, if you want to win the game, which most players do, you help the team, right? So that's something that Helldivers 2 excels at, is that you help the team win. Some players, especially when they're starting off, will wander off and just do their own thing. And they're going to learn very quickly that you can do that, but as long as the main objective isn't complete, it's a very bad idea, because you could be wasting resources if you die, or if you use up other if you die, or if you just keep aggravating squads of enemies and they keep surrounding you. So by the time your teammates are done doing what they're doing and they get closer to whatever objective you're at, it is just an entire war zone of just 50 platoons of like fucking like heavy rockets, like heavy rocket enemies, right? So yeah, players do learn early on that team play is necessary. As for the team play itself, the intricacies of it, like some players will understand, like they're gonna pick it up pretty quickly, but not as much for others. So I wanted to, for this video today, especially since I've been feeling a little patriotic. You know, God bless the Federation. That Liberty Day has happened, and actually that we got the theorized armor that I honestly didn't think they were gonna add, but they actually did, and with a new gun. So I'm feeling pretty energized right now. So a couple things I wanted to mention about team play is that the first and most crucial thing you need to understand before like going in deeper into like assisting your teammates throughout is check your fire. Now, of course, a lot of players early on, they're going to figure out very quickly that even though this game is PvE, you can still like fuck up other players if you're not paying attention. So like if it's not a problem to them, which it will be if they keep continuously fucking other players up and the other players get mad at them, but usually they'll figure it out pretty quickly, and then they're going to start taking notes on like how to check their fire. So one of the things I want to mention is that some players, when they're like starting out, they might just get a little too aggro and start like charging into bases or whatever, which that's fine. But something that's going to happen is that they're going to get swarmed by enemies, and if they're smart, they can still like outrun them, or even if they have enough like luck or skill, they can outgun them, right? So the problem is that sometimes when they get swarmed, teammates are nearby. And you'll notice that sometimes, especially with higher level teammates, they don't shoot at the like swarms of enemies that are on them. The reason why that is because even though, like I said, it is PvE, you can still kill your teammates, like I did right there trying to cook the grenade. So something that's gonna like confuse them is like, why aren't they like shooting the enemies for me so I can get away? It's literally because of that. Like if an enemy's like within a few like meters of you, your teammate can definitely just shoot the enemy and just like take care of it for you, and you can just do whatever you need to do to get out of there or just fight them back. But if they're like within feet of you, not meters, within like feet of you, that's kind of a you problem now, because you're gonna have to either deal with that or get enough distance from them so your teammates can reliably kill that enemy without hurting you. And that also goes for like stratagems, right? Because something that a lot of games have is like audio cues, in which they're not always like hyper useful. They're like pretty somewhat useful, but like I said, even for like a game like Call of Duty, you don't really need to listen to you really don't need to listen to like any audio cues. Just run around, gun everything, and like shoot everything you see. But for Helldivers, sometimes when you're just wandering about with like your squad, and you're about to charge into an objective with like your own head plan of what you're gonna do, you might hear one of your enemies say like calling in an airstrike, and then at that point you got to stop, either retreat back because they're likely gonna throw that stratagem, whatever it is, into the area, or you can just like sit back and watch and see who's gonna do it, right? So audio cues are actually pretty useful, especially since enemies can like give away their position from like a very good distance away. Like I found out a long time ago when I first got the game that it sounded like enemies were like directly behind me, but I kept checking the map and they were like a few meters from me, and I was just like looking and I was like, where are they? Like, am I hearing them? Am I hearing like invisible enemies or something? And as those like enemies, like that little itty bitty squad, got closer and closer, they began to get way louder and way more like distinguishable to hear what they're saying. And yet, and believe it or not, yes, the bots do say stuff. It's just very garbled. But yeah, in general, like audio cues are very crucial. So if you want to play the game with or without music, I mean, it's up to you. But always keep your ear out for the audio, right? And something also to mention is that you actually can help your players in ways that you don't really think about, because most games don't really consider it. That's something I do also like about this. It almost feels like Valve logic. So you guys know how Valve games have like this interesting it is kind of a mechanic, an interesting mechanic called Valve logic. And basically what that means is like if you can think about doing something in real life, is what you can do in a Valve game within reason, right? So like, let's say you're playing Half-Life and like you're about to run into a corner of enemies, but you have like let's have a very simple example. There's a barrel in front of the enemies. Of course, as for most games, you know to just shoot the barrel, right? So that's like a very very light understanding of valve logic. Like it can get way deeper to like the way you interact with like barrels floating in water, the way enemies like want to like run around and you can like trick them or whatever. Like valve logic is very, very noticeable in Valve games because most developers don't really consider it. They want you to play the game exactly the way they curate it to, which for games like Red Dead 2, that's fine. But for other games, that's kind of the selling point. So you can play the game how you want, and it'll work out within whatever the reason is that you're like playing the game, right? And so Helldivers has a little bit of valve logic. So you know that when you stim yourself, your character takes out a stim and like jabs it in them. So realistically, in a realistic scenario, if a teammate is low on stims and they don't want to use it yet, but you have a few extra stims, realistically you could just give them a stim, right? In this game, you can. Like in other games, it wouldn't really like. That's not something the developers consider, but that's like kind of a Valve thing to think about, right? So if you walk up to like one of your teammates and they have like not even like a lot of health loss, if they have like a little amount of damage on them, you just walk up to them, press the interact button, and you'll give them a stim. And that's especially helpful if you have like what's it called, the experimental serum. Where like if like a buddy of yours is like really low in health and they don't have any more stims, but you have a good amount of health and they're both behind cover, you can just go up to your buddy, stim them, and they're gonna be back in the action like just like that. Like you don't have to wait for them to have like supplies. You don't have to wait for them to die so that when they come back they have full stims. You can just stim him right there and then he's back in the fight, which I think is really good. Another thing to keep in mind is that most players don't realize this at first, but there is a communication system that also, aside from the texting and aside from the chat system, right? And it's like think of it like the gestures in Call of Duty. It's basically that little wheel of just emotes that you can do, except they're relating to like stuff that you can like say to your teammates, which players do like take interest in depending on what it is. Like, if a buddy of yours, like, if some random cadet is, like, gonna walk over to, like, an extraction point, and you're not done with the objective yet, maybe not done with the objective yet, but you're not done with, like, the side missions yet, because all you guys are trying to do all the side missions, get all your resources, and then extract. But the buddy doesn't know that. Like, let's say he's going to, like, go extract, and then you hear him say, calling in extraction, all of you can open up that interaction wheel and say, like, halt, or stop, right? And if they're paying attention, which they hopefully should, if they are learning, if they're paying attention, they might hear that and like either like abandon the base, or wait for you to give a command, like a direct command. In which case, if you want, you can use the voice chat, or you can quickly go and just type something and say like no extraction yet, leave the area. In which I know that some players do like to call in an extraction, and then wait for everybody else to come by, and then everyone gets on the ship. Because that's something other players learn quickly as well. It's something also I learned pretty quickly, is that I kind of figured that once the ship is called down, you have all the time in the world to get in, because there's no countdown, right? And then one day, when the ship was already there, I went inside of it, and then there's that 18-second countdown. It's oh fuck, I don't know how to get out of there. You can't. Like once you're in, that countdown starts, and once that hits 0, the ship's gone. So. Also, that's something else to remember, is that even though you can abandon an extraction, you can always call it back in the second you're back there. It's just the reason something for early level players to understand is that the extraction is literally the last thing you do. It is that, or the one other exception is that you're very, very low on reinforcements, and you're just not going to complete whatever you're doing with those amount of reinforcements or within the time limit. So you might as well go to the extraction and just collect the samples. Because that's something players also got to remember, is that a lot of players do like collecting samples because they're extremely vital to progressing the game. Now, in general, most players don't really understand in the beginning why they're so important. But once you realize that the ship that you have has like a little upgrade section, which allows you to upgrade everything from like increasing how many bombs a cluster bomb can have to decreasing how long it takes for a stratagem to arrive to your position. Like, the samples help complete that. So in general, it is always a good idea to always extract last and make sure that once you're there at the extraction, that everybody's there present. because you don't. There's not any setting in the game that tells you who has what samples. Therefore, who should you likely prioritize. But generally, when you're extracting, make sure you wait for everybody there. And the second anybody gets on that ship, you best hope everybody else gets on that ship as well. So given there's 4 players, it's not really that hard, but sometimes on like higher difficulties, like 4 is not that difficult of a difficulty, but depending on the planets and sometimes just your luck, it can be a pain to get into the extraction with all 4 players within the same time, right? But yeah, that's something to always keep in mind, is that just wait to call the extraction and just wait for everybody to get there. Especially since players, especially as you like advance in levels, you will understand how important samples are. Another thing that I've noticed sometimes is that players will kill other players that take their samples, and I think that they're doing that because they think that they're taking their samples. They're taking everybody's samples. The second, like let's say I'm with a full squad of players, and I take like a common sample, just one of it, just one common sample, and the second we extract and get back on the ship, it's not I have one common sample and everybody gets nothing. Everybody now has one common sample in their inventory. I guess you can canonically explain it as I just get on the ship and I take a bayonet and I just cut it in like four chunks, and therefore everybody gets a piece. But yeah, the second, whatever samples everybody has in total is whatever samples everyone will get at the end equally, which I think is a really great way to incentivize team play. And so, yes, although it may seem rude to some new players, if you see samples lying on the ground there, whether it be just out in the wild or somebody's dropped samples because they died, take them. Like common samples, you can always find them like everywhere. So common samples aren't really necessary, but all the other ones like rare and super samples, like those are really like people really love them for good reason, because you need a lot of them for like the really good upgrades. So, and everybody gets them in the end if you collect them, right? Something to also consider is that I'd say if you want to test out your stratagems, if you get new ones, because I would test it basically all of mine. I know what I like, I know what I don't like, because I know what suits my playstyle. So I know all of my stratagems, right? But I did it the dumb way, where I tested whatever stratagems I was testing in normal gameplay as I was advancing, right? But I'd say if you really want to learn your stratagems, just it is possible to just go into a complete offline game, not offline, but like when nobody else can join you, and do like let's say levels 1 to 3, like not difficulty 4 or upwards, like difficulties 1 to 3, and then you just play the game. Just understand what they like, understand what they can do, understand like their range especially. Because that's something that also can sometimes change and vary, which I did. I knew that in the patch notes it said they were buffing a lot of stuff. I didn't know that they had buffed the the strike like that hard. Because back then you had to throw an orbital strike like directly on top of a fabricator, and then it would destroy the fabricator. Nowadays you can throw it like a little bit off, like even a few feet off, and it'll still kill the fabricator, which was like, whoa. I didn't get that stratagem yet that buffs like the strike in general. That's just like the base strike. It's not buffed. So every once in a while, if there's patch notes that like change stratagems especially, and you want to understand what they changed, because sometimes patch notes and what's actually in the game can vary. But if you're curious enough to actually try it, so that you don't accidentally kill your teammates with something that used to be like a pea shooter and is now a lethal 50 caliber like a rifle that just like shoots off in the air. Probably good to test it in like one of those like mini like games, right? Something to also keep in mind is that even though you can buy super credits, it's always better to find them out in the world, especially if you're playing on higher difficulties, because it versus like 5 to 10 to 15 super credits every time you find them like per game. But like as you get like higher up, like the super credits itself get higher up, and the reason super credits people also like super credits is because one, you can pay for the cosmetics that are in like the store that rotate like every 2 days, right? And sometimes there's like really good cosmetics in there. I say cosmetics even though the armors do have buffs, right? But they are basically cosmetics. As well as that, they can buy war bonds. Now you can already just buy war bonds with like $10 if you own money, but it is way better just to acquire the super credits and then buy the war bond. Like I have like 1,500 super credits and like 150 medals, and I'm just waiting for December 31st so I can buy the war bond with these super credits I earned, and then buy all the other little things with the medals that I earned. And that's also another thing to keep in mind, the medals. Now keep all this other stuff I said with from like samples to super credits to medals. Like I said, if you get one, everyone gets one. So it is always good to keep a lookout for those like minor locations. Sometimes the minor also there's something to keep in mind. Not every minor location has like interesting stuff, like samples or like other stuff. Sometimes the minor locations have like weapons or just ammo, which are still necessaries, but most players are interested in the stuff that like can advance you in whatever you're doing, right? So always keep in mind to always have an eye out for those like glowing beacons that like flash that yellow light in the air every once in a while. Always keep an eye out for those, and always keep an eye out for like tutorials or like stuff you like learn over time, like the striders, like the big little things that look like the things from Star Wars. Like those striders, I used to always hate seeing them because I did not know that back. I didn't even know if there was a thing back then, but I know now that as long as you have a medium armor penetrating gun, you can shoot the legs and it'll kill the machine. The bot that's inside the machine can sometimes survive, and you have to kill that too. But it's always good to kill them. It's always good to understand enemy weak points and to use them whenever necessary. Sometimes you just have to spray. I have to admit that sometimes you just have to spray and just pray. But in general, especially if you're fighting the bots, everything I'm talking about is on the bot front. I don't really play the Terminator front. I know people like fighting the bugs, but I can't, man. Just the swarms of them and how many it is. It just I understand. I understand people like them, but I love the bots, dude. It feels way more challenging and way more fun in a way that like makes me think, right? And speaking of thinking, like something to also keep in mind for the bot front, because I also noticed that too. A lot of new players who play the Terminator front. Nowadays, I'm seeing a lot of new players playing the bot front, and I understand this because the bot front is more popular, while the Terminator front is more in line for new players to understand, like just like playing the game, right? So, also just for new players to know, it's always good to not always shoot everything you see. It's something you understand also immediately once you start playing the game. Is that you see, like, especially in early levels, you can take on a lot of patrols, like a lot of them, even towards the end. When you're going to the extraction, and when you're going towards the extraction, and the patrols get heavier, like, even though the patrols are much heavier with like a lot more bots in them, you can still take them at like early levels. But the second you get to 4 and beyond, it's a good idea to just, if it's not unnecessary, do not engage them. Like, I understand that within, sometimes you just accidentally wander in front of them, and then there's nothing you can do about either fight or run. I'd recommend just running. Like, I understand that it might look like cowardice to like run away from like even an easy fight. It's just not worth the time, because especially as you progress in levels, like the requirements for their like directives and for the like and even just the amount of stuff you have to do per mission can increase. So it's good to just not engage when you don't need a fight. And that's also something else that extends to something else. So some players, when they engage like an outpost in like the bot front, they will like blow up like the factory, right? Like, let's say they finally blow up like the 4 factories in like a big area, right? And so what they're going to do is continue fighting. And I understand if that's unnecessary if you're like cornered and you have to fight your way out of it. But once the actual area is like declared safe, like it may not be safe, but there's no more factories. So again, all the factories are gone. Dip. Like, get the fuck out of Dodge, because you do not need to fight them. You already completed your objective. If you can run from it, just let them be. All right. Just let the little fabricators just be gone and just don't do anything else about it. Just leave. Like that's all I really want to give advice on. The other thing I want to give advice on is just understand team play, because even though like a lot of sessions that I've been in, not everybody has a mic. Like, most players that are understanding the game as they progress can slowly pick up on a lot of things. Like let's say for one of the objectives, you need to raise up one of the radio tower and then realign it and then send the signal to the Super Destroyer, right? So one player that can just activate the terminal and then watch for the thing to get all the way up to the top. And the second it does, the player that's watching the terminal can just go to like the signal and just realign it to whatever it needs to be. And another player that happens to be there can just sit back and wait for the tower to be realigned. And the second it is, they can just press the go button and objective complete, right? Oh yeah, something also to keep in mind is that the game is very obvious, which it tells you what stratagems your players have. Like in the beginning, like you might think it was weird that it's showing you what the other players are going to drop in with like their guns or like their artillery or whatever. That's information that's very pertinent to you too, because if a ton of your teammates have like a bunch of like offensive weapons, it might be a good idea for you to have some defensive weapons in case it comes to like extraction or if you need to hold a position. Because sometimes even though a lot of offensive stuff can be used in defense, it's still very, very challenging to try and figure out how to use it for defense without hurting your teammates. And I do understand that some defensive items can still kill you, but it's understanding how to use information to your advantage, right? The only other thing I want to mention is that feel free to use whatever weapons you like. I've seen players use like really average guns to like players using like the meta guns, and everyone's still having fun. So like I said, even though this community has evolved over time to where the newer players are starting to understand the meta a lot quicker, and are starting to understand how to play the game a lot quicker. Like it's still at the bottom of the end of the day, a game that you're meant to have fun with, right? So that's really it. Whatever weapons you want to use, just use them. I'd say in general, still some of the good meta weapons to always keep an eye out for, and if you need to, just use is. Like just figure it out on your own. I use my own meta basically, which I basically just run and gun. And also another thing I want to bring up is that players are very, very aggro in the beginning. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but players when they start off are very I keep saying aggro, which is very aggressive with the way they fight the enemies at first, right? So one of the new weapon we just got, which God bless Liberty Day, God bless the Federation, but the newest weapon we got was the Constitution. That's the name. It's the Constitution. I was just going to say the Springfield, because it just looks like the Springfield from Battlefield 1. But yeah, it is like the new weapon that they added to the game. And I noticed that a lot of new players, like they still do have fun with it, but they slowly start drifting away from it, so using their other weapons because they don't know how to understand accuracy and how to use that gun correctly. So real quick, just for the new gun, which by the way is now issued to everybody because it's a participation award thing, which it's basically awarded to all of you that are now serving with all of us, and all of us that have already been serving already. So something to keep in mind with the new gun is that even though it only has 5 shots, and even though it's only medium armor penetrating, and even though it doesn't have a scope, it can still be very viable in gameplay. Like, in my footage that I'm showing you guys, I'm sure you guys are going to watch it and think that the gameplay is like a little slow or whatever, or like even like a little strange in the way that, even a little strange, and like how I'm not very confrontational with it, but keep in mind, it's a bolt action gun in a game where all the enemies are using fully automatic weapons. So yeah, funny enough, I thought that it would be like an M1 Garand. Like at least be a gun where you don't have to have a bolt action system, but instead is like a semi-automatic gun. It's not an M1 Garand type. It really is a bolt action gun. And I was like, this is a gun. It's gonna be like cool and all, but I don't know how viable it's gonna be like during gameplay, especially with the bots. But you know what? It is extremely fun, and like it is getting me way better at aiming. Like you guys may not know, but. My favorite gun in the game that I first got was it basically looks like the Scar, right? Not the advanced version of the Scar with the scope and the heavy armor penetrating, and the medium armor penetrating. I mean the normal version of the Scar, where it just has a regular scope and has a light armor penetrating. And I loved that thing until my new favorite gun came out, which was the Liberator Carbine. which I'm sure you can understand, suited my very aggressive playstyle. Which, yes, even though I said that aggressiveness can be a bad thing, as you level up, you can eventually make aggressiveness viable, right? Because it's always good to remember to have team play so that you can help you and everybody around you advance way better into what they're doing. And so yeah, I figured out how to make aggressive play very viable for me for a long time, but this gun, it is teaching me how to be accurate again, like how the other gun did. So I like this thing. Also, I think it is like way more fun and way more it is way more fun to get a headshot on this thing with and I mean like way out in the distance, especially since you don't have a scope. This thing is iron sights only. Like, we're back in World War One, baby. Like, this thing has no scope. You just fucking eyeball it with like the little itty bitty iron sight, and you nail that fucker from like a 50-meter distance. Like, it's way fun, dude. The only other thing I want to say is that thank God they buffed my Desert Eagle. Thank God they buffed my Desert Eagle to go from light armor penetrating to medium armor penetrating, because it's a god blessed 50 AE Deagle. As for the actually technically, because it's because it's medium armor penetrating and the Senator is heavy armor penetrating, that means that at most the Senator might be 44 caliber, but the Desert Eagle might be 357. I was getting off track, but yeah, like, if you haven't been in the game for a while, or if you haven't gotten the game yet, I'd heavily recommend it, especially since the new War Bond is coming out, and I think it looks pretty good. And as for the prophesized third enemy faction, I hope it's soon, man. I hope it's real soon, around the corner. I saw the leaked footage of the tripods, the fucking War of the Worlds looking tripods, and I really cannot wait to fight those things in action. Those things look crazy. That's really about it. I hope you guys have a good day. Hope you guys had a good Liberty Day, and God bless the Federation.